Hi there, I'm Joey.
I'm Jacob.
And we are watching Star Trek for the first time. Last time on Star Trek, we had the Gorn, we had lizard people, and rocks being thrown left and right. And
yeah.
It was a good time. Actually, it was a really good episode.
Some Wile E. Coyote antics.
Yeah, it was pretty great. Today we are watching an episode called Tomorrow is Yesterday.
Ooh.
Which I think... Here's my big leading theory.
Sure.
Is that this episode is finally going to address the time travel shit from Naked Time.
Oh, that's possible.
That's what I think, based on the title alone and the vague Paramount Plus thumbnail.
So hang on. First thought before we get into post-episode thoughts, right? Like, so I have two thoughts. It's either like a crew from the future, from like our current, from like Kirk's perspective, coming to the past, or they're the future going to the past.
I think it's far more likely that they'll go to the past, if for nothing else. I think the Star Trek production team would rather just pull out some regular old sets and locations and costumes from some other TV show and recreate the 60s or something, rather than someone else coming to the past. I think that's far more likely. Is that they're coming to like past Earth or something. I mean, this is also just assuming I'm right. I'm guessing I am.
Right, like, on the assumption that you are correct, that is way more likely.
Yeah. But I guess we'll find out. We're about to get into post-episode thoughts. Be sure to join us then. We're about to watch Tomorrow is Yesterday. I was right!
Woo!
Yay, I was right. We did it. We did finally follow up on the time travel thing, which is actually kind of cool. It was kind of weird having an episode that didn't start with the traditional like fanfare of any given episode.
Right.
It was just a couple stock shots of some airplanes, and that's about it. So
and ending with the setup of the Star Trek of the Enterprise in modern day Earth.
Yeah.
Or I guess slightly ahead because they were talking about the moon landing.
Yeah. So this episode focuses on one Captain John Christopher. And I looked up the actor played by Roger Perry, who gives a real standout performance in this. Like, really good stuff.
Like, he's actually very good, yeah.
Yeah, he's fantastic. So he's the focal point of this. He's a pilot. He gets beamed up to the Enterprise as they do their time travel shit, and they come back to the 1960s, which is really funny because it's modern day Earth at the time, at least. It's modern day Earth. Also, I looked it up. This episode was written by one DC Fontana, who has written in one episode before, and that was Charlie X. So this is significantly better than Charlie X.
Oh yeah, significantly better.
But yeah, so there's this weird back and forth because they get Captain Christopher on the ship, and there's this constant back and forth of like, oh, well, we can't return to Earth because he knows all about us, but we have to return to Earth because he has a son in the future who's going to be important to space travel.
Our history.
Yeah, and you had an interesting theory.
Oh, but I never panned out. At least no one ever said anything about it. I said that I was betting on, by the end of the episode, like Spock turning from his little computer thing and going, him or one of his descendants is actually related to you somehow.
To Kirk.
Yeah.
Which would have been interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if they did that, but they didn't.
They didn't. I'm not disappointed necessarily.
Yeah, it's just, it seems like something that they would have done. Yeah.
I'm just saying I would have written that.
Yeah. But it's this weird back and forth. Like, they want to return him, they can't return him, and then when they do get him down to Earth, he's still acting as if they're not going to let him go eventually. Right. He threatens them with a gun at one point, and it's like, no, we've already agreed that we're going to keep you down here. You just got to wait a little bit longer.
Right, you got to let's actually figure out where to put you.
But this brings us to the really weird aspect of this episode, I thought, which was just how time travel works in Star Trek, or at least time travel as we understand it here.
Okay, because you explain it, because then I think I was thinking about it while the credits ran through.
So through the course of the episode, there's this whole mix-up when they go down to this like air base, and instead of beaming up Sulu and Kirk, they get this one sergeant who's like down in the air base. So he's up there as well as Captain Christopher. And in the end, what they decide to do is they do the same thing. They slingshot the Enterprise, as they say, around the sun, and they go back in time back to when the Enterprise first arrived here, which was when they took Captain Christopher, and so they beamed down the Sergeant and Captain Christopher into their bodies that they were in at the time. and they just don't remember any of their time on the
Implying
Enterprise.
that, okay, so now that you've explained it better than I would have in a moment, what I think they're implying is, because they're beaming them to the exact moment they would have been beamed out, it cancels out the time travel. Or, like, their experiences with the time travel.
So you're not saying that, like, you know, if we did that to anyone at any given time, that, like, they would immediately lose their memories of what had happened. You just think it's because of that specific circumstance?
Yeah. I think, like
because they didn't really elaborate on that.
No, like I'm just inferring by the fact that not how Captain Christopher reacted, because he was gonna not say anything anyway. It's the sergeant who I was like, okay, I was thinking about like that implication. I was thinking about his reaction, because when he finds Kirk and Sulu, he's like, aha! But when they beam him into his body, like when he would have been beamed out more or less, he would have looked around like, well, nothing wrong here.
Yeah, it's odd. It's an odd moment. But on John Christopher as a character, like I really really enjoyed him. Had some really very nice like human moments. I especially love the scene where they say like, oh yeah, you know, you have a son in the future, and he's like, I don't have a son. And he's like, not yet. You know, and, like I don't know. I thought that was just a great performance. You know?
Yeah, it comes through that like in that moment he's like, oh crap.
Yeah. It was just a really nice moment. Also, between last episode and this one, Shatner got some fucking stunts.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
He has this whole fight scene with a couple of the officers down in the airbase, and like
it's an actually good scene.
It's really good. There's this whole bit where he like swings above a doorway, and like these guys like tumble under him.
Right. So like without like if we described no other stunt, he's grabbing the door frame and he kind of pulls himself up, lunging backwards.
Yeah.
As a guy jumps through to try and catch him.
Yeah. It's just a really cool moment, and like Shatner always kills those stunts. Like he's really good at those. So that's fun. Also, a surprising amount of Sulu in this episode.
Oh, I'm not complaining.
No, yeah, I'm not complaining about more George Takei. He's great. I did actually really like the interrogation scene when they do catch Kirk though.
Yeah.
There's like this whole bit where they're like, "Oh, what's your name?" "My name is James T. Kirk." And they're like, "Oh, how did you get here?" "I already said you won't believe me." And then there's this whole bit where he's like, "Oh, I'm a little green man from Mars."
Yeah.
I really like that scene.
Because he's clearly actually answering the questions, just not in a helpful way.
Yeah. But it's fun. It's just a really fun scene. Yeah, very much enjoyed that. So, and then I really like the rescue scene when like Spock, Sulu, and Christopher all come down, which is weird. I don't see why Christopher had to come down with them.
Well, that was his threat. Remember, he was like, "Listen, you could just, beam in anywhere. Take you a while to find the place, but like."
But it's weird. Didn't they say that he drew out like the schematic of the airbase
I
for
pointed
them?
that out during the episode. I was like, just reference the schematic.
Yeah, like he already laid out the airbase for you. But I mean, unless they didn't have, unless Kirk and Sulu brought it down with them,
maybe. I guess it's possible considering like they wouldn't have spawned in. They wouldn't have beamed into the room.
They mentioned the schematic like once. You know, when Kirk and Sulu were first going to go down, and they didn't bring it up for the rest of the episode.
Right.
I feel like they should have.
But also because we need him to threaten them on Earth, there's a reason we didn't bring it up again, I imagine.
Yeah. Also wanted to mention that the computer voice in this, I mean, it's still the same actress doing it, like, like she has in every computer, every episode that we've had the computer voice in. But here, like they say, like it's because of like it's derived from this planet entirely made up of women, and she's played once again by the actress that plays Nurse Chapel.
Yeah.
And they're like this thing. There's like this thing where like every sentence she says to Kirk, she says it like really sensually, and she's like "dear" at the end of every single one.
Right.
And I don't know, it was just a weird kind of running gag throughout it.
It's funny. It's good.
I do feel also we did get it a little bit, but not as much as I would have liked. There's this whole idea that Captain Christopher was really taken aback by not so much all the spaceship. Obviously he's taken aback by the spaceship, but also just how they run everything up there and the crew up there. And I feel like Star Trek in a different era might have made some more commentary on how Christopher might have been taken aback more by the diversity of the crew than anything else.
I mean,
because he made a comment about the computer voice and about the planet of women, and there was that.
Right, but that was pretty much it.
Yeah, I feel like we could have had some like really good commentary, like him talking about like Sulu or Uhura or somebody there, because they're all in this episode.
Because it's a really because like. If an average 60s man would have just walked into that room, there's no way he wouldn't have had comments.
Yeah, especially considering like it's a ship. It's it's the evolution of his profession.
Right.
Like, it's literally he flies an aircraft. They are a spacecraft.
Right.
It's
the evolution of his profession. Exactly. So it's like he could understand the basics of what's happening here.
Yeah.
The crew would be the most questioning part.
Yeah, to him at least. Yeah.
I mean, think about, like, from his perspective. Look at Kirk's immediate crew: a black woman, an Asian man, an alien.
Yeah, especially I mean, like, on the thing that is they play it up a lot, like in the show. Like, the thing that's actually taboo there is the Vulcan.
Yeah.
And everything else is just totally normal, and that's great. I mean, maybe not the Vulcan being taboo, but it's that commentary, that the show has been doing since episode 1, and it's been great. And I just would like to see that have seen that a bit more here. But it was still a pretty good episode.
I'm with you. If we did this episode today, we might have had more to say.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, hey, who's to say? Maybe we will go back to this time period eventually and make some more comments on it in future series. Who knows?
I don't want to say I hope so, but I'd be very curious to see how it's handled.
Yeah, definitely. But I guess that's about it. Still a good episode. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Better than Charlie X.
Yeah, definitely. So big win for DC Fontana. All right, I guess that about does it. Be sure to join us next week when we continue Star Trek: The Original Series. Until then, this has been Joey Morgan.
I'm Jacob.
Goodbye.